Perfect. So, hello everybody, and welcome to our third Landcare Build Skills for this year. We haven't met before. My name's Eve. I'm the Member Services Manager here at WOLN. I'd like to extend a welcome to a few members of the WOLN team and the committee who are here joining us today. We have Vanessa, our Landcare Expertise Exchange Facilitator, and Jack, our CEO, is here with us. And we also have Bruce and Anne-Marie from our Executive Committee. So thank you so much for all of you for joining us. Now, before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that I live and work on Whadjuk Noongar Boodja, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend a deep respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders on the call today, and I acknowledge their ongoing connection to land, sea, and sky as the world's oldest continuing culture. Now, please feel free to acknowledge what country you are on in the chat function, because I can see that we're all quite spread out, and we've got Kim and Jessie who are over from Melbourne. Now, today we will be discussing how we can take care of ourselves in the land care space. And now this encompasses coast care, waterways and wetlands, and working on farms. I'm sure that we can all acknowledge the duality of experience that, we work with some of the most incredible volunteers, the satisfaction of completing a project and knowing that you are truly contributing to improving the health of our bush, and the beautiful connections that we make along the way with people and with the environment. But I often think to some degree that there's a lot that goes on that people who don't work in this space don't see. And this could be any number of things, whether that be a failed planting or a funding organization going into voluntary administration, and you end up losing your project. That actually happened to me this year, or whether it be having the environmental knowledge and awareness to see the beginning of shifts in your patch that others may not notice. So I thought I'd open up the session with my thoughts and speak from a personal experience as a student, as a parent, a land carer, and a practitioner, and sometimes, all of the tricky overlaps that these can have. So this semester is my last semester at uni, and I'm doing some research into addressing declining rates of connection to the environment. And I'm looking at what is driving this phenomenon and what are the implications and how we can practically address it. So I'm also looking into how adult environmental volunteering and childhood environmental education programs can address this to increase nature connection. So I'll keep you posted on the results in the coming months. And now I'm sure that some of you can imagine that the findings of some of this research is a little bit depressing, but it's also been extremely inspiring looking at the scientific reasons why land care benefits us and our local environment, and positioning community land care as a powerful tool for climate action and strengthening our relationships with each other. As a young person who is actively trying to reduce their time spent on social media and trying to be mindful of how I'm using it, I'm acutely aware of how overexposure could contribute to, eco-anxiety or eco-despair, and particularly amongst teenagers or younger adults who, they're then searching for answers about what is happening and what is being done and what they can do, and there's a lot of uncertainty for them. And if we want, we could touch on this later on in the discussion if members of the audience feel like this is kind of relevant to their experience too. But something that we've been actively working on at WOLN is really positive and hopeful messaging and thinking. And this is also something that I actively try and practice myself. I just wanted to finish up with a couple of thoughts that others who are leaders in the community space have shared with me, which have had a bit of an impact. The first is from Jack, and discusses the idea of being a practitioner versus being a crusader. So what actions and lifestyle can you actively and sustainably maintain without leading to burnout? And the second is from our recent Hall of Fame inductee, Lou Duxbury. And she mentioned that, one person can only do so much for the environment. And the most important thing really is bringing people along with you and sharing that experience with them, and kind of letting that passion that you have for the environment just kind of reverberate outwards. And the last one is just something that I try to remember when I'm feeling a bit anxious about climate stuff. And it's just, focusing on what you can control and not thinking so much about what you can't, and making kind of more practical action guide your life and the way that you live. Now, I'm going to introduce our first presenter, the lovely Kim Boswell. Kim is a facilitator, trainer, and coach with over 25 years experience in community engagement, fundraising, and volunteer program management. She's worked across Australia and internationally, raising millions of dollars, recruiting thousands of volunteers, and leading teams of hundreds, all while designing programs that inspire environmental action and behaviour change. For 15 years, Kim has been deeply involved in Landcare in both voluntary and professional roles, working at local, regional, state, and national levels. And as the founder of the Forever Agenda and Community Leaders Academy, her work helps environmental organisations strengthen governance, plan strategically, and build resilient networks through effective volunteer recruitment, succession planning, and facilitation. Having delivered more than 200 trainings and strategic planning sessions, Kim is passionate about equipping grassroots communities with the tools and confidence to create lasting impact for the landscapes that they care for. Amazing. Now, I'm going to hand over to Kim. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Eve. Hello, friends. It's a while since I've been hanging out in WA. It's great to see you all. That was quite the introduction, but I think what I'd love to tell you is that at my heart and soul, I identify most as a land carer. I have such a great love for this movement and for the work I do in it, and it is an incredible honor and privilege to be here with you today to talk about this topic. I've got some slides, but not as I normally do. They're more photographic that I'll share along the journey. Before I kick off, I do just want to firstly acknowledge WA Landcare Network for bravely leaning into a conversation like this. I feel it's really important in all of those strategic planning sessions that I do, which is about to hit 120 this Monday, for groups, networks, regions. It always comes up about how do we care for ourselves? How do we avoid burnout? And how do we ensure that we are giving as much love and care to our people as we are to our landscapes? I think at its heart, Landcare is a movement of people care and landscape care. And so I don't think we have this conversation enough, and I just really want to honour the space that's being created here today. I am coming to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and the Bunurong Boonwurrung. I'm in Emerald up in the Dandenong Ranges, and this is a meeting place where the Wurundjeri and the Bunurong people used to come together to share, to intermarry, to share food and festival and celebration. And so it is not lost on me that I live in a place of community for, 60,000 years before us here today. I'm going to share with you a little story of burnout, actually, and recovery. And interestingly, as I was throwing some photos together today, I discovered that revisiting this journey has actually been really replenishing for me. So I just want to say thanks for the opportunity to share it. It's not a story that I've shared a lot, but I hope there's some insights in there that can help you on your journey as well. So prior to my work with Landcare, I worked for a little-known organisation called Greenpeace. My job at Greenpeace was as a fundraiser and also as a community engagement specialist. So part of my work was to take these big global campaigns, things like whaling, climate change, toxics in our environment, overfishing of our oceans, protecting our ancient rainforests, and translate them down to grassroots action across vast and varied cultures. It was a journey that took me to 32 countries around the world and to live in 5 states of Australia. And it was exhilarating and effervescent and exciting to be at the forefront of environmental activism throughout my 20s. But it was also a journey that wore heavy over time. And so it was probably 10 years into this journey that I found myself really, really depleted. I think there's two sides to this story. Part of the story is that I literally lived out of a suitcase for 6 of these years overseas, flying country to country and working with local communities. And the impact that had on my health, both from like jet lag and probably lifestyle, was pretty powerful. But also, there was this piece of the puzzle, which was talking about these big issues and on a daily basis, sitting in the narrative of worst case scenario. So while we were a solutions-based organization, in order to get to the solutions at a localized level and to inspire action, we would often be sitting in this space of worst case scenario. And I think over time, 10 years of it, it just ran my battery right down. And I started to head into this space of what some might call despair, but lack of hope and an uncertainty about what the future held. And it kind of dragged me down. I don't like to use the word burnout a lot, but I think it is a good description for what I went through. And in the summer of 2008 to 2009, I was probably at the lowest, returned home to Australia. And what burnout looked like for me was sleeping 15 to 17 hours a day and numbing out. So whether that was disappearing into the internet instead of interpersonal relationships or alcohol and vices, it just was compounding into this not such great space. In February 2009, amidst this personal turmoil, the Black Saturday bushfires happened here in Victoria, in the Yarra Valley, where I'm from. And I had a lot of family and friends really deeply affected. And I think that was the trigger for me to go, something's got to change. And I think it's not an unusual story that when people find themselves in this place, it's hard to find the courage to step on out and make change. And it's often a pretty catalytic event that starts that. And so I returned to Thailand at the time to run a last fundraising conference and decided to return to Australia to recover, but also with the direct intention to work in fire recovery. And so guess who came along as the perfect place to do that? After a bit of downtime, I applied for a Landcare facilitator role here in the Dandenong Ranges and Yarra Valley. And this was where I fell in love with this movement. We were running bushfire recovery workshops at the time, and it was pretty grim in Victoria. We'd lost 180 of our community. Our landscapes were so badly burnt, we wondered if they could ever recover. But here I found this entire movement of landcarers who weren't just talking about it, they weren't just advocating, they were on the ground. They were building gabions, they were dealing with the erosion, they were on top of the blackberries before they came back. They were taking action. And standing alongside this incredible community taking action, I found myself recovering alongside our landscape and alongside our community. And so Landcare has been that story for me. It has been the piece of the pie that gave me back my happiness, my spark for life. Through Landcare, what happened was I learned to intimately have a relationship with this environment that I'd been fighting for the 10 years before. When I bought my property, it was the land carers that came here, walked this land with me, saw the ragwort, told me it'll be okay, but here's what you have to do, saw the blackberries, taught me how to deal with them, found the endangered emerald starbush, told me how precious it was and what I had to do to protect this plant. And so my journey from there has really shifted into now supporting Landcare committees and Landcarers around stuff like volunteer recruitment and succession planning and strategic planning, and really putting the foundation in place to ensure that we make life for our critical, amazing, incredible volunteers as easy as possible, and so they don't burn out, right? Because we know that this movement often rests on the shoulders of our incredible committees and all of our volunteers. So I guess through that, I was trying to think of what were the key pieces of that story that really made the biggest difference. And for me, I think it was absolutely the power of community. And Landcare does community so well. I love the work of Meg Wheatley. She talks about islands of sanity. And so Meg Wheatley, she did all this research, and she talks about how railing against the system, which we're also used to as environmentalists, conservationists, even farmers just looking for extra help on their land. But that railing against the system and fighting against the system actually only leads us into burnout. And so instead, she recommends we find these islands of sanity, these places of possibility and refuge where we find our cohesive community who know that they can't survive this tsunami alone and know that staying together in healthy relationship is the only way to accomplish the work that we have to do. And this is not unheard of, right? We all know how important personal relationships are for longevity and for being able to continue when the mission is quite large. I think the other piece of the story was really about unplugging and connecting back with nature. You know, I fought for nature for so long, but how connected was I really with what I was fighting for? And Landcare plugged me back into that. You can't care for the environment as a landcarer without having your hands in the soil. And most of us, you know, especially our committees, we don't get into this movement because we're excited to sit behind a screen and fill out endless grant applications and then acquit those grants and write reports, right? We get into it because we want to be in touch with nature. We want to be in action. And when burnout gets at its worst, I think what flourishes is apathy. And that is one of the biggest things that will hold us back from actually achieving our outcomes in our local landscapes. And throughout my journey, I've discovered that the only antidote to that apathy is action. And so these three things combined, the community, the belonging, the care of the people, plugging back into nature and taking action for the things that we care about most, that's what regenerated me. And I will forever, ever be grateful to this movement for giving me back that spark of life. And then I just wanted to share, because I pulled up this drawing that I did. So one of the other things that I really like doing, and it's a kind of secret source of well-being for many people, I think, is tapping into creativity. But I took these notes from a presentation with Pam Durant, who is a burnout coach who's based in Dubai. And I just brought this up because there's a couple of really important things in here that I think is worth noting and that really resonated with me. So one is that this concept of burnout, we can overuse this term. We often talk about burnout. However, burnout leaves breadcrumbs, right? So up in that top left-hand corner, we know that there's signs before the storm hits. Things like that feeling of overwhelm or feeling micromanaged or feeling like culture around us is challenging. If we can pick up on these breadcrumbs before the storm hits and really put things in place and have the self-awareness, but also the community awareness and the care for one another to be able to kind of have the difficult conversations when we see our land carers or our fellow community members falling into this space, then we can prevent burnout happening. I think all of that stuff, those breadcrumbs that happened before, it's totally normal, it's totally natural. And I think the trigger is really, can we find it before it gets bad? But when it comes to those self-care strategies, she gave us 10 in this talk. And what I realized was that 6 out of those 10 self-care strategies are taken care of completely through environmental volunteering. Landcare is the answer. I truly believe this. What we are doing for our communities and for our landscapes combined is so significant that many people will never weather that storm because they are in regular volunteering or regular engagement with their local landcare groups. And so I guess I just want to leave on this thought that when we speak of preservation and restoration in the landcare context, we usually mean the land, the soil, the waterways, and the ecosystems. But the ripple effect is so much greater. In restoring our landscapes, we're also restoring belonging. We're restoring purpose in our people, and we're restoring hope. And for me, that is the deeper story of Landcare. It's that we're caring for the land, and in doing so, we're caring for ourselves and we're caring for each other. I am
Thank you
going
so
to
much, Kim.
unshare.
That was so powerful. So many beautiful words and phrases. And thank you for sharing your story as well. Incredible.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who may need no introduction to some, Jessie Panazzolo. Starting out as a terrestrial ecologist and environmental educator, Jessie is now a proud carer of people who care for Mother Earth. Beautiful. In 2019, she founded the global community Lonely Conservationists, a pioneering platform that provides resources, advocacy, and a voice to budding and burnt out environmentalists. Advocating for the need to provide care to members of an often forgotten care-based industry, Jessie's website, books, podcasts, and resources are used to help budding and burnt out conservationists in universities and organizations around the world. Recently, Jessie has established Earthcarer Care, a site dedicated to the care of all who work for a livable future on our planet beyond conservation. Embarking on a role in the climate space, Jessie has witnessed a need for activists, climate scientists, educators, and a wealth of other earth carers to receive care during their careers too. Now I'm going to hand over to Jessie. Thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation today.
Thank you so much, Eve. And as I share, I want to thank Kim for her very wise words and amazing presentation. I love hearing other people's stories, and that's something I'm very fortunate to do in my position, is hear a lot of people's origin stories of how they came to care for themselves. And I have to echo Kim's sentiment of gratitude to be able to talk about this today, because so long throughout my career, I wasn't able to talk about the suffering that I had in working on ground and in restoration and all the challenging times. I think there was this air of perfectionism that everybody had to have to establish themselves in the space. And so now to be in a place with all of you talking about these struggles, but how we have a space to hold each other in those feelings and say that they're okay, and here are some strategies to get through it together, is just, I always leave these sessions feeling so grateful that the world has come to a place like this. And no matter that there might be some terrible things happening, it gives me hope that at least our industry and our sector is moving in a really, really positive direction. So I really appreciate being able to be here today. And Bruce Pascoe once said as well that we often say sorry to Indigenous people, but we rarely say thank you. So I also want to show my gratitude to the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the lands in which I live and work. and recognize that a lot of the work that Indigenous peoples have done for years and years underpin a lot of what we do in the conservation and land caring sectors. So I hope that we can carry that notion and those thoughts with us as we have our discussions today. So, as Eve said, my name is Jessie. I'm the founder of both Lonely Conservationists and Earthcarer Care, and this is my story. So, on the left-hand side, we have what I envisioned being a conservationist to be when I was a kid. I thought it was traveling to amazing places, seeing amazing different species, experiencing the world's biodiversity, and overall experiencing what I saw in nature documentaries on social media, which didn't really exist that much back in the day, but there was still blogs and websites and Australian Geographic magazines. But when I embarked on the industry, what it often looked like was a lot of bureaucracy, red tape, paperwork. It looked like getting myself caught in an illegal snake trap in the middle of a North Sumatran forest and having chronic ankle issues for the rest of my life, and staying in locations where culturally I may not belong or may not understand the language, and having to do a lot of work in establishing myself in anywhere I went to find work or opportunities. So the life cycle of my early conservation career was getting really, really excited about a new career opportunity, then getting into it, finding myself underpaid, exploited, and with bad conditions, often with no HR or union to help out if anything went wrong. I would then experience the dreaded burnout that Kim mentioned in the severe way of not being able to rock up to work anymore because I was just so, yeah, there's nothing left of my fuse, and I had to leave the job and I had to try to find something else. And that's not all. I feel like just regardless of what you're doing in an industry, in a job capacity, if you care about conservation, environmentalism, there's a whole lot of mental load that you're carrying as well. Like if I buy new clothes or new items, I'm thinking about where they came from, the ethics of it, how it's going to be disposed. If I'm in an environmental career that's minimum wage, but it's doing something I'm really passionate about, I'm often grappling with how I manage my finances. The overwhelming notion that there's always too much to do. Maybe my friends and family can't understand my life choices and they're questioning why I'm doing a lot of volunteering or why I'm getting paid so little when I have so much skills and expertise, and it's hard to communicate that with somebody. Exploring amazing ecosystems is so incredible and something I love to do, but the guilt of traveling large distances and that carbon usage is something that's on my mind. Minimizing food miles and wastage and just grappling with the future. I feel like even if it's a few of these, we're going through our day-to-day life with all the issues that we face at work and in the industry, but then there's this extra mental load of being an environmentalist or an environmental steward and carrying this weight of the world on us as well. So about 7 years ago, I felt like the loneliest conservationist in the world. I felt like I was the only one grappling with the frustrations that I felt in the industry because, as I said before, I didn't see anybody else struggling. All I saw was beautiful pictures of landscapes and animals and people doing amazing things, but I never heard anybody else talking about the challenges that I was facing again and again and again. So I started a blog called Lonely Conservationist, and I did a call out that if anybody resonated with my story, if they would share their stories too, or just at least let me know. And in a very, very short space of time, I had hundreds and hundreds of stories from all around the world from conservationists who resonated with me, had shared my struggles, and there's others in other parts of the world who had more diverse struggles and were experiencing other things that I hadn't even experienced. And it was interesting because it was this thing that I was too afraid to talk about or that nobody was talking about. And all of a sudden, there was a surge of conversation around this issue. I had Australian Geographic wanting to write articles and Mongabay and everyone wanting to do podcasts. And it was so weird to now talk about this thing that I had never spoken about for ages. And even the journalist at Mongabay was talking about how he tried to write an article about this a few years prior, but nobody wanted to attach their name to their stories in fear of not being able to get a job. So he was really happy that there was now that there were conservationists who were willing to talk about their experiences. So on the Lonely Conservationist website at the moment, there's hundreds of stories still from people all around the world who have experienced certain challenges. We've had conservationists write from evacuation centers during the bushfires, who have experienced tsunamis, even a bird watcher in America who had a gun pulled on him because somebody thought that he was following them and they were selling drugs. And it's crazy because I'm a bird watcher and I was like, I would never ever expect to experience that when I'm out in the streets looking at birds. So it's just really incredible to have all these stories here validating the things that you experience and also shedding light on kind of the struggles that other people might experience if they were to go into the field too. So after a while, I became what I called a conservationist, somebody that cares for conservationists. But as Eve said in my bio, I've recently got a job in the climate sector, and it's really highlighted the need for this caring of people in the environmental world to be more than just for conservationists. So I feel like conservation is my origin story. So in the beginning, it was very conservationist focused. I published a book called How to Conserve Conservationists, which helps you understand how to look after yourself in the industry, but also helps your friends and family to understand how to look after the conservationists in their life as well. And I really wanted to value the voices of the people in my community. So I published their stories in The Secret Life of Conservationists to give representation to what people were going through that's not usually talked about. So really recently, I created a second space called Earthcarer Care, which is my space to write stories and give resources about how earth carers from all walks of life can care for themselves. And in the start of How to Conserve Conservationists, I kind of talk about how you're a conservationist if you're a mother who's teaching her kids about the different types of flora and fauna, or if you're a lawyer that's recycling paper and all these kind of things. But I realized that language is really important, and a lot of people who aren't traditionally in the conservation industry might not resonate with that terminology. So I just wanted to make sure that many people as possible in the earth caring environmental space had access to caring resources, because I feel like they're so essential in this industry. We spend our time caring for nature and the world. Psychologists have psychologists they can speak to. Doctors seek other doctors. But if we're in such an integral caring space, I feel like it's really important that we have caring resources as well. So how can the industry support us? I think it's important to look outwards and see if people are in a position of power, management, CEOs, what they can do to help out in this space, because I feel like there's some really easy changes. I feel like valuing the expertise of earth carers financially or in other ways is really important. Like even as a volunteer, I would find it so useful if a representative from the organization asked me what I wanted to get out of volunteering, and whether that's job experience or skills, or they wanted a reference, or like whatever they wanted out of volunteering, having a really transparent conversation and seeing how the conservation organization could help facilitate the goals of the volunteer, the landcarer, the conservationist that's involved. I really also feel like the industry needs to be more accessible. A lot of volunteer opportunities in the space, or even early career jobs, are hard yakka work. 1 out of 5 Australians has an invisible illness or a chronic illness or invisible disability. And I feel like there will be some people on the call today that are grappling with one of these non-visible bodily challenges. And so I feel like it's really important that we offer more accessible options in the space for people to get involved if they are not able to go out and do hard yakka in the field. And also something I've been grappling with too, which I never hear talk about, 50% of the population menstruates, and often there's no toilets out in the field site, or not great amenities. There was a lot of the time where I was working as the only woman in a team of male restoration crew, And they'll be like, here's the site for today, and there's absolutely nothing. So I felt like if I was menstruating, maybe I'd have to stay home, miss a day of work, and it wasn't full-time work, so I wouldn't get sick leave or anything. So I feel like there's a lot we can do that's really, really simple to make the industry more accessible. I also think we need to destigmatize mental health and provide options for care, as I was talking about before, because especially with the rise of eco-grief, eco-anxiety, there are people who aren't in the conservation industry. There are just normal average Joes that are really grappling with the state of the world. So that's especially, what is it called? More exacerbated in conservationists and people working on the front line. My words are not working today. I think it's also really important that we connect beyond silos, because often we're just talking to people who are doing similar work and we're not learning from each other's mistakes. So for instance, when I was doing work in North Sumatra, there was 5 orangutan organizations. And I always thought, how amazing would it be if they pulled their resource and knowledge into one organization? What more could they do? Could the orangutans be safe forever? So I feel like it's really important that we connect with people who, for instance, if you're like, recording frog calls. Maybe there's people in the technology industry that you could tap into to increase the efficiency of your work, or just learn new things and learn from mistakes. And talking about mistakes, failure positivity is something I'm so passionate about in this industry, because it's so beneficial for so many different things. Firstly, if you're in a safe workplace and you're allowed to make mistakes and learn from them, that is so invaluable in how you develop and the knowledge and skills of your organization develops. But also, I feel like because in this industry, there's such few resources, not a lot of time, not a lot of money. And if you have a scarcity mindset, scarcity environment, it puts so much pressure on everything to succeed. The reports and the funding are like relying on you to have a very successful project. And I feel like if we talked about what didn't work more, we could learn from each other and use and apply our resources and time and funding in a more effective means. So I feel like this is why I'm so grateful to be having this conversation, because the more we talk about the things that aren't working, the better it's going to be in the future. And of course, there are things that we can do to look after ourselves as well. Finding your community is a huge one, and Kim's story really was a beautiful example of this. Coming into Landcare, finding like-minded people coming together really helps get you through those challenging times. Advocating for yourself is something that especially women aren't taught to do, but also conservationists aren't taught to do. So some people get a double whammy. But I used to think that I had to be a yes man in the industry to get anywhere. But it's only when I started pushing back, when I was offered minimum wage and being like, actually, I think I have the skills to be able to do this, given I've done this and this. And then it turns out that when I have pushed back and have advocated for myself, managers, bosses have respected me more, given me more responsibility, and have honored that pay increase that I advocated for myself for. Because I think in a world where so few people are saying, yes, I'm worthy of more, when somebody says that, they're like, wow, you must be really good. Let's cherish you. Let's give you more opportunities. So I feel like if you need it, here's some permission to advocate for yourself in the space, whether it's pay, whether it's against unjust conditions, or whether you do have an invisible illness and you would like to have more opportunities to make work more accessible. Number 3 is one it took me a long time to learn, is I think that a lot of us in the conservation space, earth caring space, what we do is our whole personality. It like becomes our identity. And I think it's really important to separate our identity from our jobs, because in times where you lose projects, you lose fundings, you lose your jobs, that's not up to you. Like that happens to you, but it doesn't define your work, your skills, your value in the space. So I think it's really important that you do other things. Like you don't have to run marathons or crochet or do artwork, but whatever it is that brings you joy outside of earth caring, land caring, conservation, I think it's really important that you have a vice where you can tap into. And when the environmental grief gets too much, you have another space where you can restore yourself and rejuvenate yourself, and not put all of your personal well-being into a very sometimes tumultuous and unstable industry. Number 4, I started seeing rest as productive. And I feel like when you start out in the industry, especially if you're not earning a high income, it always feels like there's more work to do. And I think even if you're volunteering, you could be doing this on top of work, on top of schooling, on top of uni. There's just a lot going on with that mental load that I was talking about before. So rest is actually a really good tool that you can put in your toolkit and not feel guilty about reading a book, watching trashy TV. I feel like it's really, really important that we do rest, because that's an amazing burnout preventer. And I think what I like to think about is spring and the abundance mindset of spring and everything reproducing and coming into flower. That's only a quarter of the year. It's not sustainable for nature, for wildlife to be in a productive space all year. There is a winter, and there is that hibernating time, that slowing down. So we can't expect ourselves to be in that productive spring mindset all year when nothing else in nature does that, basically. And number 5 is also what Kim was talking about, is tapping into nature's reciprocity. I think it's a very colonial Western mindset to be like, we are humans and we have to save nature, and that is a one-way relationship. It's not even a relationship, a one-way interaction. When I was talking about before, a lot of what Indigenous people have done underpins what we do in the conservation industry. I think that's really important to tap back into that circular, reciprocal relationship with nature, where we can feel the breeze, we can drink the fresh water, we can feel the textures of the bark on the trees, we can hear the bird song, and we can allow ourselves to receive back from nature. Because if we have a reciprocal relationship with nature and we're giving as we receive, that means it can sustain us more, because we're not just depleting ourselves, giving all the time, we're actually nourishing ourselves simultaneously. So I feel like that's really aligning with what Kim was saying about when you're in Landcare, you're out in nature, you're with people, you're connecting back to country. I think that's really essential in looking after ourselves. So if anything has come up for you today in either of our talks or when we have a discussion later, I wanted to point you to some resources. So both Lonely Conservationists and Earthcarer Care have a list of caring spaces, whether they're coaches who used to be conservationists, who now specialize in helping other conservationists, psychology for a safe climate, which has an amazing climate feeling space, climate cafes where you can meet up with other people and talk about what's going on. I'm originally from Adelaide, and so I was in a climate cafe the other day with some people who were dealing with the algal bloom, and I was grappling with the algal bloom too, because I felt like it's not fair that I've dedicated my whole life to environmentalism, and then when I want to go back and see my family, I can't even go for a swim anymore. So I feel like even if it's things like I don't know, whatever you're grappling with, it's a safe space to come together and have your feelings heard, but also understand that there's a lot of people who are grappling with the same feelings as well. I also have my books, as I talked about before, if you want to normalize what you're experiencing by hearing other people's stories, getting some tips of how you can conserve yourself and other conservationists in your life. And of course, on Lonely Conservationist, there's a lot of those stories there as well. And yeah, that is it from me. I just want to highlight that you're not alone anymore. And if you ever want to reach out to someone and feel like you have a community, need somebody to talk to, you can always reach out to me. I've got my Instagrams on there and I've got my email address, so please feel free to reach out. But I also wanted to share that my involvement with Landcare groups has been really, really incredible. I actually met Jack a couple of years ago in Canberra, where the National Landcare Network had a workshop for CEOs and members, which was really incredible. I also was presenting at the Tasmanian Community Landcare Conference, and I did a really, really lovely session with a Landcare group up in northwest Tasmania, where the somebody who worked from Landcare had to really invite people personally to go because nobody wanted to care for themselves. They didn't want to be so selfish, and they're like, nah. So there was a bit of reluctance at the beginning, but right at the end, we had people breaking out into song. So I felt like that was the most beautiful session and transition of a caring workshop that I've run. And so, yeah, that's all from me, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and also having the courage and the bravery to, open up that space. Before we move into the whiteboard session with Kim, I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind answering one very quick question. How did it feel to kind of post that first blog post? What was that like for you?
It was interesting because I thought I was giving up on my whole career. I thought that there was no way in the world that I would tell my authentic truth and that I would still be out of work. So I think I felt like I tried every single thing in my conservation career to make it with a livable wage and to get a job. And I just like, to give context, when I was 3 years old, I asked my mum, how can I save the orangutans? Like, I've been on this path since I was a toddler. So I was like, at 26 years old, if I can't get anywhere, like, how is anybody else doing it? I was like, I've tried literally everything. So I'm just gonna tell my truth and see if other people are feeling this way. And that's why I'm so grateful that I've been received so well that now I can be an Earthcarer carer or a conservationist because it's like, I don't know, it's just given me this whole new meaning to life when it could have, in the same respect, like completely got rid of any chance I had of being respected or taken seriously in this space.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, like, you're right, that could have been like the final point of your career almost, because it's like, where to from here?
Yeah.
And look at what it's done. It's incredible.
And I'm very grateful that that happened because I have no idea what I would have done otherwise.
Okay, so Kim, how are you feeling about running the little whiteboard session? We do it?
I am back after some serious tech issues. I am ready. Before I open the whiteboard, I just wanted to say a huge thanks to Jessie for that incredible wisdom. I especially love this piece around connecting beyond the silos. I think it's a really big challenge that we face in the environmental space, and we quite easily seem to fall into competition. And I really want to challenge us all to not fall into competition, to remember that we're actually all in this together, and that when the environments that we're in start falling into this competitive nature, that we call each other out on it and we pick each other up and bring each other back together. Because when the state of the environment reports come out, it's a grim picture. But what I know for sure is that picture would be a whole lot grimmer if it wasn't for the work of the land carers, the environmental volunteers, the people out there on the ground working in this space, volunteering in this space. And so, yeah, I guess that's one of my biggest calls to action is like, let's stop the competition. And I also just want to quietly mention that Jessie might have just normalized my trash TV watching. And I am down for that. All right, I'm going to open a whiteboard and hand the microphone over to us all as a community. For those who haven't used a whiteboard on Zoom before, I'm just going to walk you through some quick instructions. But essentially what we're doing here is really brainstorming and collaboratively coming together to share our wisdom in this space so that we can all benefit. So this is a Zoom whiteboard. The way it works is that we have these two categories. One, we're inviting you to share with us what are the challenges that we feel in this space, whether it's, the competition or whether it's getting work in the space or whether it's that you just feel like you are spending your volunteer time in meetings that say they'll finish at 9 o'clock and never finish till 11. What are the things that you find challenging that deplete or diminish you? And then what are the successes or the wins or the stories or the advice that you have to share? So we're going to type into these post-it notes. This is a live board. If you get your cursor and click on any one of these post-its right now, you'll find that you have access to it. So once you click on a post-it, you can actually type in it and the writing will be there for us to all see. If this feels a bit small to you, you have full control to expand the screen. I'm a Mac user, so in a similar way to how you would on an iPhone or with your mouse if you're on a PC. So step one is we're going to grab a post-it note. If you run out of post-it notes, you can click up in that top right corner, grab one and paste it anywhere on the screen. When you click in that post-it note, you're able to type into it. We're going to spend firstly around about 10 minutes talking about the challenges and typing into the challenges. If this feels a bit tricky, feel free to unmute yourself and we can share conversation at the same time as well. And then I've done something to really challenge us all. If it's all feeling a bit hard and you're done with typing, you can go over to the emoji reactions or the stamp reactions. And when you click on an emoji or a stamp, you can then take that and put that on someone else's post-it note to go like, yes, I like what you're saying. This could get very messy, you guys. But what I will commit to doing is to tidy it up before I send it to Eve and the WOM team to send back out to you.
Thank you, Kim.
So first and foremost, let's start with the challenges. What are the challenges that people experience in this space? What are some of the things that have happened for you that have, meant that it's felt harder? What are some of those stories? And feel free to jump in and share by voice as well.
Michelle, this bit will be recorded because I guess we can just talk about it in kind of like a vague context. It doesn't have to necessarily be personal. But once we're finished with this board, we'll stop recording or we can pause recording, if that makes sense.
And your name will not come up against your comment either. So this is kind of a collective pool of wisdom and we will share this back out, but it is de-identified. Yeah, so pay rates and hours being allowed on projects. And another common one I hear around that is also like actually being able to employ staff or pay for staff is so rare with so many of our grants. You can't break this board, by the way. If stuff feels a bit crazy, don't worry, I will fix it. Yeah, physically challenging work. Succession in Landcare groups, a really common one. We have a lot of committee members who are not stepping back because they feel like there's no one to take over. And the burden of that can feel so strong.
I was talking about today, actually, the gap in volunteer ages. Usually it's like students and really early career trying to get their foot in the door, and then retirees. And there could be a cultural gap or challenges in those groups coming together. And I guess that's hard for succession because maybe the younger cohort are going to get jobs and move on, and then the older people are there for the long haul and they're really invested in that space. So there comes with challenges that's like not even just succession, but the cohort, like the inter-volunteer cohorts, and how your culture is maintained and curated, and how you come together in that space as well.
You know what's so interesting, Jessie? For 10 years working for Greenpeace, the catch cry in every country for that whole time was, where are all the old people? Why don't the old people care about the environment? They're the ones with all the time. They're the ones with all the money. Why are they not
Wow.
getting involved? And so you can imagine my surprise when I found myself at Landcare. And what was I hearing? Where are all the young people? Why don't the young people care about the environment? Like, this
So
is not a
interesting.
generational story at all. It's just the way that people engage with the causes that they care about. It shifts and changes through the seasons of their lives. I think Landcare's doing a great job of really demonstrating like how younger people and older people and all the gamut in between can participate, but that they participate in different work. And massive shout out to all the folks at Intrepid Landcare and the incredible work that's
So
happening
true.
in that space.
I want to highlight as well this one that says lack of training and mentorship for passionate people who come into the industry late in the game. I'd also like to highlight that there's a few people in my community that grapple with, they've done a like international relations degree or medical degree, and then they find their passion for environmentalism or conservation. But because so many people have been passionate about it since birth or since they're a young kid, they feel like they're not as serious or not as legitimate, or they feel some like backlash from not being like, I don't know, on this lifelong journey. So I think when I talk about acceptance into the industry, I think we should it's also important to consider people who have found environmentalism late in life, because that's a lot of what we're encouraging people from all walks of life to come into this space. We should make it welcoming for them. And like we were saying before, Kim, about the competition, it's not all a competition. We're all here for a shared same goal. So I think it's really important that we share our knowledge and mentorship and training, especially if we've been in the industry for a long time. How can we help facilitate other people to have the experiences that we're having and bring them along board as well and feel supported in that?
That's so true.
Yeah, walking into groups of people is one of the most terrifying things for many humans. And so we talk about volunteer recruitment and we bring people into our space, but like we fail to realize how hard it is to join an established group as well. And so one of the things that has completely changed the game in my local group is when someone joins now, we have someone keep an eye out and wait for them to walk, and we go and meet them in the car park, introduce ourselves, let that anxiety drop for them, and then walk them in. And the retention rates of our volunteers have completely shifted as a result of this one action of just like what does welcoming look like? How does it feel for the other person? How do we bring people into this space? And how do we truly like adjust and adapt to make them included?
Oh, that is such a good idea, Kim. Like, and I feel like that could be one of the key points taken out of today as well, is just like, yeah, have that one person to make sure that all of those new people are up to date and welcomed and know that they're valued. Yeah, that's genius.
That
Yeah,
value piece is so huge, because it's like if you're not going to value volunteers financially, you need to provide some kind of value in another aspect. So if it's as simple as making sure they're welcomed and they have a induction or they get to know people introduced, that's like a really easy form of value that's so easily overlooked. So that's super important, Kim.
so
You go, Kim.
no, go ahead, Eve.
I was just going to say, if anyone, yeah, like what Jack said, if anyone's struggling with the whiteboard, also feel free to just unmute and just have a yarn if there's
Or
anything you want to contribute.
And if you want to throw stuff in the chat, I'll transfer it onto the whiteboard for us afterwards as well, so it's captured.
That's probably easier.
Let's flick over to the successes. Like, what's worked for you? What are these secrets of success? It might be little handy tips like, you know, walking someone into a meeting, or another one we've talked about a lot in our succession work is around that people need to feel like they are giving meaningful action when they first come into an organization. And so one of the things that we often find is that when there's a bunch of new people, we can tend to do things like, oh, can you wash the dishes out the back with Jan? But in terms of retention and welcoming and belonging, anyone can wash the dishes. And so people get a task like that, and they may not feel like they've been able to uniquely contribute something meaningful in their first kind of coming to an organization. Some people have debated me on this one, though, because a lot of ladies like to say how the real work happens in the kitchen. So whatever works for you. But I think what does ring true is that meaningful action on your first step into a cause or an organization is absolutely vital. Yeah, working on my own in my garden, I feel that one.
That was me.
Beautiful.
It's so true.
Meeting like-minded people. Yeah. It's so important to know that you're not alone, isn't it?
On the one that says Christmas party, I think it is such an overlooked one because we spend so much time worrying about things and worrying about the future and achieving things and what do we need to do next. We rarely take the time to properly celebrate all the things that we've done. And I feel like celebrating our successes is a huge part of, I don't know, our work that's really necessary, but it's often felt not important. There's this graph that's like urgency and importance, and often we do something that's like not important but urgent, or like urgent but important. But this something like a Christmas party or a celebration or coming together is really important, but it's not urgent. And I feel like there's a lot of things that fall into that category that get left behind, where it will do a huge amount for valuing the amazing work that everybody has done, bringing people together, having the opportunity to come and share stories and build those relationships. So I feel like Christmas party is like a really, really amazing note to whoever put that in.
I agree, Jessie. And I think one of the things that I've seen many times is people feeling such a sense of urgency as if they are emergency workers and they cannot take their eyes off the ball. Like, I can't step away, I can't turn my phone off, I can't stop watching, what's going on. And they're unable to breathe, they're unable to sigh, just a really nice, relaxed sigh, because it's always this sense of, I'm on, I've got to be switched on, I'm saving things, and I've got to do more, and I've got to do more. And I think that's a really big issue. And one of the people who's just joined us kindly contributed to our Landcare News, Daniela Eyre from PHCC, talked about, Danielle, is it the solastalgia, that anxiety that comes, that people are feeling this constant sense of anxiety, and it's driving, it's grief, yes, it's driving this constant activity and this inability to sort of switch off, which we know will lead to adrenal fatigue and burnout, and potentially for some people breakdown. So these strategies are really, really important, and it's sort of almost shocking how simple some of them are, because we live in such a complex world. It's almost like, well, the solutions must be really complex as well, and they don't seem to be in what's being posted there.
Especially the one that says cake. Like, I went and ran a session with another council, and there was a baker in the team, and they always shared stories and recipes and had team meetings where different people brought in cakes. And even now in my job, we do a lot of bake-offs and a lot of bringing in cake. And cake is a really legitimate way of coming together, celebrating. And the point that I made about not being a landcarer, not being an earthcarer all the time, you can be a baker, you can be someone that enjoys eating delicious food. And I feel like similar to Christmas party, cake, these things on paper seem like, haha, that's a bit silly. But I feel like time and time again, the cakes and the Christmas parties are the thing that's really important, because it's Jack was saying that you feel like you're an emergency worker, and it's like, no, we're here to come together, and we're here to like put our passion for nature into something that's really tangible and beautiful. And so to share more of ourselves and to celebrate with cakes and parties, I feel like that's like a really legitimate part of all of this joy and collaboration that we often forget.
Thank you, Jessie. There's a couple of hands up there. Over
Yep.
to you, Eve.
Yep. We've got Brett first. If you want to unmute, and then please speak.
I think one of the things that we've all got to remember is that all the volunteers that we have around us actually have professional, or they have jobs that they've worked in or still working, and that it doesn't matter whether they're a baker or the young fella pushing the trolleys down at the local shopping centre. They're volunteering because they're interested in Landcare, and it's not necessarily a job for them, but it's the work, it's the thing they do to get rid of the burnout that some of us suffer as professionals working in Landcare.
That's true. That's such a beautiful point, Brett. And Michelle, you got something to add as well?
Yeah, I was just going to touch on the point about the celebrations, like having Christmas parties and things like that. I find whilst they are important, I think what can often be overlooked is just the individual recognition on a day-to-day sort of basis of people's efforts, because these large things, which are sort of celebrations, they can sometimes be quite performative and feel very impersonal. And the individuals that might be doing a lot of work, whilst they might get recognised at these big do's, like I said, it can feel somewhat like, oh, this is what we're meant to do as an organisation. And sometimes just, hey, I saw that thing that you did. That was really great. Thanks so much for that. It can get hard when you're all volunteers and, you know, sometimes there's a small handful of volunteers running the show and no one thanks them because they're the people thanking everyone else as well. So I think it's especially important when you're working with other organisations such as local government that it's also not necessarily seen that the local government is doing the volunteers a favour by supporting them. It's like, no, actually the volunteers are actually giving up their valuable personal time for the environment to help local government and other organisations that actually get paid to do this work and lighten their load. So I just think sometimes that personal recognition, because it does make them look good as well, these other organisations, where they can say, oh, look, we're supporting our volunteers. And it's like, yeah, just acknowledging on a personal level a bit more, I think that would really help.
Yeah, absolutely hear you, Michelle. And just, you're right, the immense amount of time and effort that our Landcare volunteers put in across the state, it's kind of unbelievable, isn't it? And like you say, all of the incredible friends of and community groups that operate on people's goodwill, it's truly special. And yeah, we do thank you so much for everything that you do, because it is fantastic and appreciated and vital.
Thanks for that.
That feels like a really beautiful segue to maybe close off the whiteboard and come back to the room in togetherness and share some of those thoughts and stories. How does that sound, Eve?
Yeah, and I think I'll probably pause the recording there as well. So that's just, or should we do it after we've worked through the whiteboard, do we reckon?
Well, I'll leave the whiteboard for one more moment, but it looks like everyone is done. I just want to say a massive thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights, both on the challenges and the successes. There is an absolute menu of things we can do and wisdom here to share with one another. And yeah, thank you so much for being so open and sharing that. I will clean this up and add in anything from the chat and then send that through to Eve, who will mail it out so everyone has that beautiful resource there. All right, closing down.
Cool. Thank you, Michelle. I completely agree with you. I feel like that's something that we speak about a bit at Wallen as well, Jack. And Jack's just posted in the chat as well, saying that we'll be doing a dedicated session for succession next year. And, you know, we can touch on all of these things again and talk about how we can engage, you know, whether that be university groups or, like Michelle and Jessie were saying, putting a call out for specific skills. I think there's some really tangible actions that Landcare groups can take to kind of move through that succession planning and engage young people in a different way. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody for your generosity in contributing today. And yeah, like Kim said, sharing so openly, it was such a beautiful session. I've really enjoyed listening to everybody's stories and their challenges and their successes. And thank you, Kim and Jessie, for your presentation. They were absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so like Jessie mentioned, we will send out the resources from this session in an email in a few days, and we'll send you a copy of the recording. We'll also send out a little survey so you can provide us some feedback on today's session. If this is something that you'd like us to continue doing. We had a bit of a check-in session in June where we just kind of opened the floor for people to come and talk about their Landcare stories, and we can continue running those throughout 2026 if people are interested. And just, again, similar to this, jump on a Zoom and just have a chat. And yeah, so thank you so much, everybody, for today. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your week and weekend. And thank you to the Wallen team for coming as well. Always lovely to have you.
Thank you, Eve, for lovely hosting as always. And, you know, one thing that we kind of close off some of our comms with is you're doing an amazing job. Don't ever forget that, and tell each other and tell yourself, because we are. It is wonderful, and the world's a better place because of Landcarers. So be kind to yourself and get more rest. It's not a 4-letter word.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.